things that you should have been aware of, and if you've been watching the news at all, you know that there are issues in this nation right now with race, okay, with cultural awareness. And one of the things that we've been asked to do as a school district is to begin to think about and begin to train students on cultural awareness. All right, and so we're going to start that today, but just understand, we're not directing you to do anything too specific at this point. What we want to do is make you aware of some of the issues that we've seen. So there are going to be three of us speaking today. You're going to hear from the perspective of kind of the dean's office, and you're going to hear through the perspective of the counselor's office. And then you're going to hear from me based on phone calls I've received and conversations I've had with parents over the past 5 years. Okay? The things that I want you to be aware of, two things. One, I think sometimes people believe that there is not an issue. There is an issue. Our kids do things to each other that are insensitive, that are causing problems within the nation or within our school that we have to address. But then there are others who think that it's this constant flow and that it's just everywhere. It's not that extreme either. Okay, so it sits somewhere in the middle, like most things that we see. Bear in mind, one of the things I want you to think about is if you're a student and you come to the school district, which is roughly around 90% Caucasian, and you're a minority student, walking in the door, you're going to recognize that right away. Okay? And so I believe that that's something that we overcome to some degree, but it is something that's there. So how we work with students who are minority or other, not just minority, we also have LGBTQ community. All right? So we have students who have a sexual identity that is different than what other students are accustomed to. They also have. We have another issue that sits out there that ties to cultural awareness. We have low-income students. And sometimes they feel like they're mistreated because of their economic status. So as we talk through all of these things, be aware that we are talking about obviously some of the big ticket items that we're seeing in the press right now. But we are also talking about things that go beyond it. Okay? It's our kids as a whole. So how can we make this place a better place? And so what we're going to tell you are some of the things we've heard, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that help our kids just learn to bridge gaps. Okay? Because ultimately, we can change our little corner of the world to make it a better place. That's what we want to do. So, through our conversation, we found a nice little video. It's about 6 minutes and 25 seconds. Hopefully you can hear it. If not, then Dan's going to help me by turning up the volume a little bit. But I'll give you the preface on this. So Anderson Cooper did a multi-piece report on children of race, talking about their feelings about race. And you see a big difference between the younger students, younger kids, and the older kids as time goes on. And we thought this was a good kind of segue to get us started. So that's why we're putting it in place. Okay? So I'm going to press play. And then when the video's done, Officer Westbrook is going to take over.
We're continuing our precinct and special report, Kids on Race and Education. Its aim is to study children's attitudes on race and understand how and why they form their opinions. We teamed up with renowned child psychologist Dr. Nolan Cohen to try to design this study. Now take a look at this. Cohen and her team showed 13-year-old children this picture and asked them to describe what was happening. Questions like, what's happening? Are these children friends? And would their parents want them to be friends? Now the picture is designed to be ambiguous. What's happening is in the eye of the beholder. Then they showed them this picture and asked the same question. Now, the only difference between the two pictures, the race of the kids was flipped. Both white and African American children were tested, and the psychologist showed a similar set of pictures to 6-year-olds. At our request, they also asked kids open-ended questions about race to understand how it plays into their own lives. And as you'll see, the responses were raw, Some of the experiences they described were shocking. In our first report, we told you that when testing 6-year-olds, the research showed an overwhelming majority of white kids were negative about interracial friendships. The majority of black children, on the other hand, were positive. But we discovered a lot changes from childhood to adolescence. Take a look. The study found when 6-year-old African-American children were asked about interracial friendships, the majority responded like this.
Carrie was trying to help her. For building good school friends.
But watch how they respond by age 13.
Carrie, she's a bully, so she was happy.
Do you think that Chris and Alex are friends?
No, not really.
The optimism we heard from young black children fades with age. At age 6, 59% of black children think the two kids in the picture are friends. By 13, a total flip. 63% do not think they're friends, matching the white teens' attitudes. Our expert says experiences like 13-year-old Jimmy of rejection begin to explain the disappointing trend. He says a white friend's mom forbade her son to be friends with him.
They end up to say because you're black, so you can't hang out. But her son.
So she kind of very openly said that the reason why her son could not hang out with human friends was because he wasn't black.
Because of their skin.
Dante was bullied so badly because of his race, he had to change schools.
I've been bullied from like the way I look and the way my skin come up previous school that I went to. And they just kept on bullying me, and I didn't like it. I just asked them to stop, like over and over again. And then I tried not to break, but I couldn't. So I asked my mom, can I?
Peer interactions are a way to
Our expert, Dr. Killen, says the decline happens because they've been given a sobering reality check on race.
they're getting a lot of negative feedback through elementary school and adolescence. And I think if you have that kind of experience and have it repeatedly over a number of years, your optimism is going to decline because you've been told, you really don't belong here, you're really not part of us.
Dr. Killen also says anxiety about interracial dating from both black and white parents can have a profound effect on how their kids view friendships.
Parents of young children do often send messages about we can all be friends with everybody. They do send positive messages. But by adolescence, they start getting more nervous about this. And they start thinking, well, you should be friends with people like you or like us. How are you? I'm so bad.
Soledad Orion asked some kids about the issue after it came up during their test.
Do you think your parents would be fine if you decided to start dating a black girl? Brought her home?
Honestly, my parents probably wouldn't be too happy because if I was to marry a black girl, you're connected to their family now, and who knows what her family is really like.
So they probably wouldn't be that excited about it.
Probably not.
Shantae admitted anxiety and a double standard for interracial dating in her family.
If I were to date a white guy, a lot of people wouldn't really have a problem with that. But if my brother would bring home a white girl, there's definitely going to be some controversy.
From your parents or you?
From me. from me. Really, because I think it's more of a problem for people when a black man brings home a white woman because it's been like that for years.
So it would matter to you?
I think it would, unless, of course, she were not to act, I guess, so, quote unquote, white.
What's happening?
I'm fine, they're so ghetto. No. No.
There was some good news in our results as well. The racial balance in school can make a major positive difference on how white kids view race. The study tested kids from majority white, majority black, and racially mixed schools. The difference was remarkable. Students in majority white schools were the most pessimistic about race. Only 47% think their parents would approve of kids from different races being friends. In racially diverse and majority black schools, 71% are positive about it. The reason, according to Dr. Killen, is friendships.
There's almost nothing as powerful as having a friend of a different racial background to reduce prejudice. You have that experience that enables you to challenge stereotypes. You feel like
Samantha attends a majority black middle school.
my grandparents have a lot of, like, they're very racist against African Americans and like other races, but it's 2012, so they have to like push that aside, and they'll be like, no, that's wrong to me. You want to stick with your own race, and I'm like, no, that's everyone.
Anderson Cooper, CNN.
Are you already quoting the cops about this? It's like that, this is like, these are the police.
Morning. I think everyone can know me. I'm the school resource officer. I personally thank Dr. Freeman for inviting me to be a part of this. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about, being the grandson of a civil rights activist. And it's something I've done a lot of research on, and I'm still doing some other things in my own personal life to help try to fix this issue and educate people. My goal today is to give a little bit of understanding, okay, and get people to a point of understanding my perspective as a black man, because our perspectives are different. And it's just that, it's our perspective, our culture, is a little bit different, that's it. What I'm going to start out with is a couple stories that I've experienced personally, okay? My first department was in Kelowna, Illinois. That was the first police department I worked for. I was the first African American ever to work at that police department. That city is about 5,100 people. They were still burning crosses in 1997. That was their last cross burning in 1997. When I got hired, several citizens went to the mayor's office and filed a complaint against the police department for hiring African American officers. That's how I began my career there. They did not want me there. I got called a lot of names for a lot of years by the citizens of that city. There were certain houses I could not go to by myself. Other officers told me, don't ever go to these houses by yourself. Always have a second officer with you. It didn't matter why I was there. I was an adult at this point. So I was kind of used to that kind of behavior and that kind of reaction. When I was around 17, I was stopped by the police in a vehicle with my friends and my cousin. My cousin was stopped because he was missing a screw out of his license plate. And the officer told him this. That was the only reason why we were stopped. We were questioned about where we were going. They weren't very nice. They had 2 other squad cars with them for a screw missing out of the license plate. This was something that was common growing up. Being stopped on the road, where are you going, how did that come? These kind of experiences are going to shape these kids, as we see, at 13 years old. They're already experiencing this. By the time they get here, you might hear these kind of things. It's because of their experiences. They are absolutely experiencing these things. And these resources are amazing. There's 3 videos like this that Anderson Cooper did. You can find them all on YouTube. They give another perspective, and they're talking to 6-year-olds and 13-year-olds. You know, it's hard to believe that a 6-year-old sees race. They absolutely do. It's in our television, it's in our music, you know, when they go to the park, it's in our schools, it's everywhere. It's in our households. Our parents are telling us these things as well. It's not always right, but we have to be understanding when they bring that up. We have to analyze those kind of situations. So that's one of the situations, that's one of the video resources. There's 2 like this. One for 13-year-olds, one for 6-year-olds. There's also another one for 6-year-olds that shows how they feel about themselves. And that is the DOLL study, D-O-L-L study. Anderson Cooper 360 does that one as well. You can find those on YouTube. Very important videos to watch to get that understanding, the perspective from those minority students. Another great resource is Jane Elliott. Is anyone familiar with Jane Elliott? Jane Elliott was an educator in northern Iowa And the day after MLK was assassinated, she did this experiment, brown eye, blue eye experiment. She literally turned kids against each other based on their eye color. It took her 5 minutes. She also did this study with adults. It took her 5 minutes. They treated each other horribly because of their eye color. Because someone treated them differently because of their eye color. They separated them. She has a lot of videos. If you go to janeelliott.com, she has a lot of videos on there, a lot of resources. She is uncompromising when it comes to this race relations. And I haven't found an argument based on her experiments, her studies, that defeats anything she says. I've been able to see her personally in Peoria. She's an amazing educator. On that website, she has a list of questions, and I have this, I can email it to anyone. She has a list of comments that are commonly made that are racially biased, and a lot of people don't even know that they're racially biased. With those comments, she gives an explanation of why it's racially biased and the problem with those statements. One of them being, and I hear this a lot, I have friends that are black, or I don't see color. If you tell her you don't see color, she will destroy you. And I've seen it in videos, and there are videos online that you can see if you research Jane Elliott. Everyone sees color. If a 6-year-old sees color, they've been seeing it since before they were 6. Adults see color. How we react to it when we see it. How we acknowledge it. That's where the problems come into play. The book that she wrote, based on that blue eye, brown eye experiment, is called A Color in My Pocket. Very good book. Very good website, also a lot of resources. So I would definitely suggest watching those Anderson Cooper videos and researching Jane Elliott. Very, very good information. Another resource that I found, and Deanna Zare gave me this. I did some research over the weekend. Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Acho, former NFL player. The reason why a lot of us are here is because we can't have this conversation. He has opened up that door and said, hey, you can ask me anything. Ask me anything about race. And I won't get angry. I'm going to explain my perspective. You can find that one also on YouTube. There's also something called an implicit bias test. IAT. You can find those online. It goes over religion. It goes over politics, it goes over race, it has several different categories. It'll tell you subconsciously where you lean. What side of the argument do you lean on? There's good ones on there, there's not so good ones on there that give you a good indication of kind of where your mindset is at. But I also want to offer myself up. You guys can ask me anything about black culture. It's just our cultures are different. No different from America and China. Cultures are different, right? It's the same here. We want to say we're all American, but we're a multitude of cultures within one country. I want to be that open book. You guys have a question. Be curious. What's my perspective? I don't want the conversation to be uncomfortable. I want to be open to that conversation. So, if you guys ever have conversations, come to me. We're going to be open, we're going to learn from each other. And that's the goal I want to get everyone to. Understanding my perspective based on my experiences. And then once we can get to that understanding throughout, then I think things will be a lot more better. And the same thing with our students. If you guys can understand my perspective, you're going to understand those minority students' perspective as well. They see the same things I see. So the same experiences that I've had, they have. Any questions right now? Please feel free to ask me anything. I'm an open book. I'm going to give you Miss Ross here. She's going to cover some other stuff.
And unfortunately, not all of them are treated that way. So when they're coming in our office, they are frustrated, they are angry, and often they don't know what to do. And what they do is they lash out. So what we're trying to talk about one of the things is just being graceful. You know, that golden rule of treat someone the way you would want to be treated goes a long way. And when you guys are bus drivers and lunch people and stuff, so you guys see a lot when a child walks on that bus and what that attitude is like, and whether or not they're going to get free sitting in that bus or another student having thrown at them, that type of thing. And, you know, and that creates that fear of, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to be here. When they're walking in the cafeteria and, you know, something has happened, sometimes, unfortunately, you're on the receiving end of a snarky comment or something, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. So treating them with grace, treating them, and that's not saying that what they're probably acted is okay or anything like that, but sometimes it's like, okay, something just happened, maybe, and maybe finding like, hey, are you okay? That type of thing, because when you are the one that can make a difference in that child's life, it's amazing. And it's amazing to see when they have someone they can talk to. You might be that one person that they're like, I feel safe with you. I feel safe that I can tell you something. And that's what happens in our office, and I know that happens with bus drivers, and I know with cafeteria workers and teachers and the like, that sometimes you are that one person that they can look to as a friendly face to say, hey, I'm not having a great day today. You know, it does, you know, Dr. Freeman talked about when you're a minority walking in these doors. I will never know what that's like, truly, being a white female, but I lived in a foreign country where I was, you know, a minority in that country because I was a white female and I was in China and amongst that. So I know what it felt like to walk on a bus and be like the only white person on that bus. And let me tell you, I didn't even speak Chinese, so they're all, who knows what they were saying about me too, type of thing as well. But I know people were at times graceful, because I remember one particular time when I was hanging my hand on a thing, the lady, she was like, pointed to this and pointed to my hand, and my hand was going to get crushed because the door's open, that's what I was holding on to. So there, I mean, so when we look for it, there are things, but at the same time, just, again, just I cannot reiterate enough of when you're with those students and sometimes they're coming across as a not so nice person, that deep down they really are. And they are just, that is their way of, there's a coping skill, and it's not a great one. But if you've been in that situation enough, you're going to develop that skin and act like someone is there trying to push you away. You guys have any questions?
Okay, so stories. Because that's kind of the theme. So my first year here, I remember standing out at a football game, and I had a couple of parents walk up to me. They were Middle Eastern descent. And he said, can we talk to you for a little bit? And we talked for about 20, 25 minutes about what their kids have gone through with our kids here. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is you've heard about understanding across the Westbrook. You've heard about grace through this Ross. My end of it is respect for each other. So the stories they started telling me were about how their kids would be at times, especially the boys, would be called terrorists by our kids. Our kids thinking they were joking around. Even the parents said they think they're being funny, but it was. And what happens at night at home is different than what they see during the day at school. Because then those kids go home and they are down. And at times broken, where they're crying on their parents' shoulders. I've heard similar conversations from parents of some of our transgender kids, who the kid just feels like such an outcast, like they're not a part of things because they have parents. I've heard it from African American parents. I've heard it from parents who have students, or in one case, the most recent, was an adopted student who was Chinese. It was tied to the corona, where the kids thought they were joking around with that particular student and basically blaming COVID-19 on them. And the kids are home crying, broken. That's not what we want from any of our kids. I've heard the same thing from, and I'm just going to put it bluntly, some of our D50 kids who feel like they come from District 50, therefore they're treated as less. You know, and I think that there's some, and I think Officer Westbrook hit it pretty well, implicit bias. You don't realize, I don't think our kids are doing this stuff on purpose. Some cases they are, and we address that very directly. As a matter of fact, about 3 years ago, I started noticing a bit of an increase in this and had a specific incident occur where I knew that our student had said something way out of line. And I felt like the discipline isn't going to end it. We need to start to educate the student in another way. We are educators ultimately, right? So our job is to teach, to train. So I needed to find somebody who could come in because, and I'll hit the elephant in the room. I'm a white man, okay? That's a tough one for me to overcome when I'm talking to a lot of people because I'm the target group for this, right? But having said that, I sat down with Officer Taylor. Many of you know him. He's a tremendous resource. He's been the DARE officer for the schools, for the elementary schools for years. I talked about bringing Troy in to do that training, but Troy's problem is he's our SRO, so he sits in the dean's office a lot of times when discipline is being handed out. So automatically, he's carrying baggage with these kids tied to the fact that he's the authority. He's sitting there when they're getting disciplined. Okay? I need somebody who can retrain a kid who's just been disciplined, but not carrying the baggage. And Troy and I had a good conversation about that. So Officer Taylor comes in now and we'll meet with our kids who have disciplinary action and there's a racial element tied in. So they can sit down and talk with him about it. What does this mean? How do I feel about it as an African American police officer, as an African American man? What does this mean to me? Is that what you think of me? You know? And it starts to change because I think one of the biggest things that we do know, and they said at the Anderson Cooper video, it's tied to friendships. You can have this bias, but the second one of your good friends is from a minority culture, you start to change your mindset on how you look at things. You know, and I think ultimately that's one of the things that we need to bring into play here is getting our kids to respect each other. All right? So, respect, huge ticket item. Ultimately, look around, we're all human beings. For the 2% to 5% that we disagree about, be it politics, religion, race, whatever it is, we agree on 95%. I can pretty much guarantee that everybody in here wants a warm bath. Wants to feel like they're a part of things, wants to know that they're loved, that people care for them. Want to know that they're going to be able to eat. For human beings, our ultimate end is the fact that we are who we are. You know, and finding that common ground, I think, becomes more important. Right now, we're spending a lot of time staring at the differences. If we turn this around and start looking at the similarities, we begin to treat each other with respect. And that respect carries a lot of weight. Will it overcome everything? No. Do we have a way to go? Yes. But I think if we could just start by working with our kids, being aware that there are things that they are saying to each other that need to stop. And I'll also tell you, they're probably not going to do a lot of it in front of you. They're going to do it in places where they can't be hidden because they know they can get in trouble for this stuff. And right now, they have no concept of how to use social media. Not zero. They think anything they say on social media is okay. And I will tell you, some of these kids are saying things on social media that will eventually make them unemployable. How can you hire somebody who made these statements? Right? So, working with our kids, I think one of the important things that we are asking for all of us to do is be aware that it's there. Be aware that there is an issue. It's, like I said, remember, I started this off with you. It's not every single kid. And it's not zero kids. It's here. Be aware that it's there. There are certain things we should be uncompromising on. Some of the verbiage that's out there should not be used. There are racial slurs. We all know them. And if we hear them, we need to shut them down fast and hard. There are slurs about sexuality that are out there. We need to shut them down. Okay, so if you hear a kid who's utilizing that type of language, we've got to stop it. It's our job to train them. You know, to work them through this, to get them to understand why. See, it used to be an education that we were the sages on the hill. We had all the knowledge. We were able to just push it out to kids and they accepted it because, my God, I'm the teacher. It's not that way. Now we have to give them the reason behind it. Why is it wrong to say that? I hear it all the time in the music that I listen to. Seriously, you think that's acceptable? I hear a lot of things in music that'll get you kicked out of places. I hear things in music that can get you kicked out of school. So we've got to be at a point where we're starting to kind of work through those things. And so this first stage of our conversation is be aware, okay? Be aware. And work hard on getting kids to start to better understand each other. All right? Treating each other with a little grace and respecting each other as people and respecting us. Because I think if we can start to get that better, then as we begin to work on this issue further, we can start to do our part to change things. If we can change things here in Washington, Illinois, we'll send 1,400 kids that are currently here out into the world over the next 4 years. Maybe those little lights can shine and make a difference where they are. And then the lights that they create can shine in a different light. So let's start here at home. Worry about the things that we can control. All right? So that's where we're starting to talk. This is why we are having this conversation today. And we will continue to have conversations like this as we move forward. Because you know what? I remember back in the 90s, I remember the Rodney King incident, I remember the LA riots. I remember seeing all of this before. To be quite frank, I think everybody would agree with it. I want to see our nation change. I want it to be a better place. I want it to be what it was designed to be. You know? We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created and women. We need to get to that. So, anyway, that's where we're starting. All right? I know you've been here for a while now. You've been in seats for a while now. You're probably ready to get up, get around, find a place to take a mask break, and breathe some fresh air. So, I am not going to talk any further, but I will say this. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you see things, talk to us, talk to us. We'll work on this. This is going to be an ongoing process. We just want to make our world a little better, okay? Are there any questions, anything that anybody needs to bring up at this point? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming in today. We really do appreciate it. I know everybody's got different places to go, so we'll be back in touch. We'll see you soon.